Hello horror hereticals, welcome to another offering of the Asian Trips feature where KK will do concise reviews of 3 Asian horror offerings from the past to present. Haunted house, or in Japan, stigmatized properties, is a well-charted territory for horror filmmakers in Asia to tell the stories on the big screen, and it was often a hit with audience than not. My favorite has to be Hideo Nakata's Dark Water from 2002. Based on Koji Suzuki's novel of the same name, the author who gave us Ringu, which Nakata had adapted as well, Dark Water told a heart-wrenching tale of a single mother Yoshimi struggling to make ends meet for herself and her young daughter. Having a roof above their head, albeit a leaky one, was something she was grateful for until things went awry. The classic story of people wallowing in misery, poverty, and generally down in luck was something going to be compounded with the haunting in their rental apartment with surprisingly low rental fee, which was a red herring. Today KK will go through 3 horror offerings with a similar theme of a haunted abode. Somehow all have the running theme of a female protagonist. We begin with a Taiwanese horror movie called Them, Behind the Door from director John Qian Renhao, released in the year 2024. We followed the trials and tribulations of a single mother Chen Wei with her daughter moving in a dilapidated apartment building, renting a unit that was visibly not been occupied for a long period and in urgent need for the building attendant to clear off that thick coat of dust when they first entered the apartment. From the onset, this had a strong Dark Water vibe with the characters' motif and the skin-crawling dark corridors of the building with strange inhabitants that are protagonists who will be apprehensive to interact with. As we got acquainted to more residents in this building, the movie started to feel like rigor mortis. A recent review I did, which was also another excellent haunted house feature, crossover with classic Jiangshi movie. The Mandarin title of this movie is 鬼们之蝴蝶大厦, with the main title focused on them, the ghosts that lived and thrived in an apartment building edged with history of suicides and horrendous deaths. Subtext was based on an infamous haunted apartment building in Taipei called Jingxing. I had done a comprehensive look through the dark history of Jingxing for the Lights Out Ghost Stories channel, so go check it out if you have not. In that video, I did a review of another 2024 Taiwanese horror film called Mystery Writers or 鬼天下, which also based on Jingxing. You could once again treat this as another instance of twin films like what we have in The First Omen and Immaculate last year. The fact that both movies just sold on the scary ambience of Jingxing building, yet the plots were totally different. While Mystery Writers' plot elements took references to real-life events shrouding the actual apartment building, Behind the Door dramatized the series of haunting and added more backstories with the various residents that gave the plot a bit more meat on the bone. Behind the Door painted the god-forsaken building as a maniac for misery, and it fed on the evil nature of the people, their misdemeanor, which led to more tragedy and misery to the living and to the dead. Although the movie was directed by a man, but there was not a lot known about the writers, it just felt like it was a personal vendetta against the male characters in this movie. The 3 antagonists were all entirely of the male persuasion, and other supporting male characters did not have any redeeming quality as well. Well, with the exception of the eye patch boy who got on my nerve after a while for his incessant whining. There were multiple female ghosts haunting the place, and it was not easy to differentiate one from another, and I realized they had cast pretty Taiwanese TV celebrities as these tragic spirits that had been bounded by the land, when they were almost unrecognizable until the film flashed back to the yesteryears when they were still alive. Zhou Qian had worked extensively in Taiwan and Hong Kong and had made a couple of under-the-radar zombie flicks with 2012 Zombie 108 or Call of the Undead, as well as a real Mondo-type film in Zombie Fight Club. He also made The Apostle in 2014, and with the wealthy coffers from mainland China, who allowed him to make the sequel to the period horror In the House That Never Dies 2 in 2017. Therefore, he had been bolstering his pedigree of horror filmmaking over the years. This was also how Qian had managed to rope in the likes of Bai Ling, who worked extensively in Hollywood, seasoned Hong Kong actor Stanley Funk, and actress Josie Ho, daughter of Macau casino tycoon Stanley Ho, in the cast, beside the famous cast members The Taiwanese side of the cast were fine with Cao Yuning's character standing out, especially how things played out at the end. As much as I like the various intertwining stories and the backstories built up for the myriad of characters, and the over-the-top level of supernatural threat at the end, including the titular Forbidden Door, I felt Qian and his writing team was overly ambitious with the stories they wanted to tell, and it got incoherent in many instances, especially when characters look alike and segments came in too fast, too furious, increasingly hard to follow every subplot. Then, Behind the Door will be awarded 6.5 out of 10. Now let us travel a short distance eastwards to Hong Kong to a movie from 1998, simply titled Haunted Mansion. The term mansion is perhaps a stretch, but the playground is definitely bigger than the usual bird boxes we see in a haunted apartment unit. Produced by Wong Jing, a famed director who was instrumental in the acting careers of Chow Yun-fat, Stephen Chow and Jet Li, but much maligned for making instant noodle style commercial films without much substance. This was the only directorial feature for director Tou Lai-chi, Du Li-zhi. From the prologue, we got to know some troublemakers was trying to cause a ruckus in a rather worn-down bungalow, which we eventually would reckon to be a ploy of a devious land developer. The house belonged to a blind old lady who had a home-based temple which seems to help shelter and provide offerings for lost souls. The blind old lady was conveniently to be played by Helena Lawlan, who at this point was in her peak as the archetypal scary old woman in a horror movie from Hong Kong. The harassments from the property developers drew ire to the old lady and her daughter, who sought help from her older daughter, Gigi, who lived in the bustling Hong Kong city with her husband Fai, who was a coastal police who really did not amount much to the plot, except to belittle Fai's masculinity later on in the film, especially when he should be at his physical peak as a policeman. Gigi Lai and Anthony Wong will collaborate with Wong Jing again after featuring in the popular The Young and the Dangerous series, and truth to be said, Wong, who was pudgy and uncouth during that time of filming, and frequently cast as a psychotic killer from those Herman Yau's movies, seems unsuitable to be cast as the husband of Lai, who at that time was considered a screen goddess. The young couple, who had to abandon a long-awaited trip to Japan to return to Gigi's old abode to help things out with her mother and sister. En route to the house, they met a geomancer who told them the ultimate in-nature of the house, and it was a portal for the deceased, which the couple of course laughed it off at their own perils. With Fai already applied leave for his abandoned trip, he stayed around the place when his wife went back to work, only to mess with the altars around the house, which did not end well for him. For the family, they were sandwiched between the unscrupulous land developers and their antics, as well as the ghostly trespasser who had been maiming to take over the lives of the people in the house. Although there was only a single plot to follow, things was a bit convoluted, and the scares were rather lukewarm. I do like the relationship side of the story, especially dealing with the parental issues between Gigi and her mother, leading her to her own mistrust about being a good mother despite Fai's desire to be a father. This was an important plot element to help our protagonist in the climactic end dealing with the supernatural menace. The plot boils down to the Chinese belief about dealing with an unborn fetus and how not dealing with it properly could lead to problems in your life further down the road. The feng shui part was also fascinating, knowing how superstitious Hong Kong people could be, and the way the geomancer described the nature of the location was nice. Sadly, the movie failed to live up to the Cantonese title of Hong Kong第1凶宅, or Hong Kong's #1 haunted mansion, which should allude to how incredulous the haunting in this mansion should be. Perhaps comparable to the scale of the movie Poltergeist, yet the scares consistently were lacking luster, and the evil human characters were all lame. This was a classic VCD dump from the 1990s, which when you picked up from the bootleg booth for perhaps $5, you might not even want to finish the movie before throwing it away. This is a 5 out of 10 type of movie for me. Now let us travel southwards to Indonesia, more specifically to Surabaya, where there was an apartment project with a hidden secret. Evidence from this movie and Sumala, which we have reviewed in episode 4 of Asian Trips, it felt like producer Rocky Soraya seems to have a penchant for horror movie with a lot of visual gore on screen. The Haunted Apartment Miss K is actually the second in line of a horror series called Panggonant Winggit, which earlier movie was titled The Haunted Hotel, released a year earlier in 2023. Beside Rocky's production team, it had almost the same crew behind the camera, with director Gunter Sohajanto and writer Riem Junianti. We have a prologue of a lady staying in apartment unit 510 who found her ceiling to be leaking water, bringing us back around to the dark water. Upon investigation to unit 610, which she was alarmed to see the whole floor being sectioned off, she will find the titular Miss K and her young daughter lingering at a flooded bathtub, giving the woman the warning of 4 days. The warning turned into reality when the lady from Unit 510 would meet her gruesome demise. Sisters Elma and Mia were coping with the death of their beloved mother and were struggling to keep their restaurant afloat in central Javanese capital of Semarang. With constant persuasion from Elma's boyfriend Ryan, who was a police inspector in Surabaya, to come to the East Javanese city to work and live with a new lease of life. Away from the unhappiness of her hometown, Elma finally considered to his request and took up a dream job as a manager of an apartment development, which of course housed the deadly forbidden unit number 610 belonging to Miss K. Elma's job, being the manager of this apartment establishment, was to resolve complaints about defects in amenities from tenants, and the water leaking started to affect the neighbouring apartment unit, and Elma had to resolve it on her own, bringing her the same misfortune as the lady from 510 in the prologue. As Ryan was in charge of the gruesome death of the deceased tenant, he would be embroiled in the curse with the likes of Elma and Mia, with the manifestations of Miss K to be far-reaching and hit you when you least expected. So, they went on the journey to unravel the mystery, and with the help of a witch doctor who had a comical sunken eyes with prominent dark rings, the trio had to resolve everything before the 4 days were up. The plot took an interesting turn towards a traditional Javanese dance, which added some traditional flavour, although it was a basis of the background of Miss K and what led her to meet her end, and how a dancing mask could be the clue to everything for Elma and company. The abhorrent nature of the murderer can make one bloods boil, and as audience you will be rooting for justice to be served in the most satisfying visceral manner. I thoroughly enjoyed the production value on display, especially the details they put in the apartments with the rustic looking furnishing and decor. On the flip side, the apartments would look incredibly eerie with a switch in lighting, and the bathroom scene with Miss K was very effective to scare me. However, the scares were quickly dissipated on subsequent appearances, touted in the ending as a real story with the ghost of Miss K and her daughter still roaming the premise. I was not entirely sure it added to the intrigue of the story, or was it a cheap marketing ploy. Upon completion of the movie on Netflix, I was recommended to watch the preceding film in the franchise simply titled The Haunted Hotel. I gave it a poke and realized the almost identical plotting in the prologue, which left me wondering if the whole concept of a true ghost story was something the filmmakers were exaggerating. Regardless, I turned off the movie 5 minutes in. The sameness in these movies did not detract me from the enjoyment attained from the haunted apartment Miss K. It had effective scare set pieces, interesting tie-up with some Javanese traditions, the performances were fine on the whole, and the beautiful looking cast of actors were easy to root for. The overt usage of gore on screen also helped to elicit some fury brewing inside me, so it was not self-indulgence from the filmmakers. I am unlikely to catch The Haunted Hotel, but I will reward The Haunted Apartment Miss K a 6 out of 10. Hope you have enjoyed this episode of Asian Trips with a Theme, with movies based on haunted houses. Do let me know in the comments if you want me to do more such themed episodes in the future, or simply click the like button. At the very least, please subscribe to my channel for more of my horror movies reviews. I did a review on David Mindell's The Ritual. Itself was based on the true account of a demonic possession in the United States in the 1930s. Go check it out. In this time and age of scarily high property prices, you might get a cardiac arrest when you see the price even before you stepped into a haunted apartment.